So thanks for having me and for being open to hearing about MPA Watch. And although we don't necessarily deal directly with wildlife disturbance, the information we're collecting kind of provides us insight into disturbances that are happening. And in the chat earlier, I said that leopard sharks are the species that I feel like are often mishandled here. I'm in San Diego, and we have a large aggregation that comes every summer to La Jolla Shores specifically. And I feel like it's wonderful for tourists to go out and to snorkel with these leopard sharks, but oftentimes there's some mistreatment as well. So prior to working for WildCoast, I worked at a large public aquarium here in San Diego known as Birch Aquarium. One of my former interns is on the call. They just privately wrote me in the chat, and that warms my heart. So I'm loving that I'm recognizing some of the names on this call as well. But let me dive right in because there's a lot to cover in a short amount of time. I see a lot of things on my screen. Kat is in the waiting room. I feel like I don't have permission to let Kat in, so I'll let someone else manage Kat. WildCoast, the organization I'm with right now. Our mission is to conserve coastal and marine ecosystems and to address climate change through natural solutions. So we are truly international. We work between mostly California and then all throughout Mexico. So that's why you can see the name on my screen has WildCoast in English and then Costa Salvaje in Spanish. So we are truly international. We are working to conserve coastal and marine ecosystems in the States and all throughout Mexico. And what that looks like in these very different places is going to vary, right? So in southern Mexico, we might be working on preserving and protecting the beaches where sea turtles are nesting, whereas in the United States, we work on these kind of three major areas. We work in the world of marine protected areas. We work in blue carbon ecosystems, specifically in the understanding and restoring of wetlands here in California. And then we work in the marine debris world. So our home office is at the US-Mexico border in Imperial Beach. So we are right there on the Tijuana River, where there is a huge influx of marine debris entering the US every single day. So we are working to mitigate some of that marine debris from entering the US waters, specifically into our southernmost MPA here in California. So that's WildCoast. The reason why I'm presenting today is because MPA Watch, which is the program I'm going to be presenting on today, is coordinated by WildCoast. So I serve as the statewide coordinator for this amazing network of partners up and down the coast that's helping to make this program happen. So I'm not going to stay on these slides for too long because I feel like this group is already really well informed. Most of you are probably doing some sort of conservation work, and you know that doing conservation at this really dramatic human nature interface is incredibly challenging for a million different reasons. This picture is showing you La Jolla, which I just talked about earlier. Those leopard sharks are coming here to La Jolla Shores every year. We've got kayakers out here in La Jolla Cove. We've got sea lions here. We've got a seal haul out site just around the corner from this spot. So all kinds of interactions happening here in Southern California. And marine protected areas is kind of one tool in our toolbox of how to make conservation and wildlife kind of coexist with this human challenge. So you've all heard about marine protected areas. I'm not going to go into great detail about them. If you want to know more, email me or do a little Googling. But MPAs in California are really the result of the Marine Life Protection Act in the late 90s. And essentially what happened was that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife were directed to kind of improve the existing marine protected area spaces. So what happened, the result of that was this establishment of this amazing scientifically integrated network of marine protected areas. So this being the California coast, all of these little dots are representing different MPAs found along the coast, red dots representing your state marine reserves, blue dots, your state marine conservation areas, and so on and so forth. They are supposed to represent, not supposed to, but they kind of represent like a string of pearls along the coast. They are integrated, meaning that Things are, there's not walls or barriers. So the geographic or the oceanographic conditions existing in the water are allowing genetic information to travel from one MPA to another. So they're all truly interconnected. And they're in different sizes. Some are very small, covering maybe wetlands. Some are very large, covering areas like rocky reefs and submarine canyons and kelp forests. But the goal of MPAs were pretty straightforward. The goals to restore wildlife and habitats, to increase biodiversity and resilience, and to buffer against climate change. So in the late 90s, CDFW was charged with doing this, and this was kind of what they came up with, and it is now not just CDFW's responsibility, but lots of statewide partners that are helping to manage these spaces, including probably lots of you on this call right now. And the four kind of main pillars that CDFW is working from are these on the screen right now: education and outreach, research and monitoring, policy and permitting, enforcement and compliance. So I wanted to put this slide up there so that you understand that the program I'm about to talk about really touches on all four of these pillars. So MPA Watch originally was created for the research and monitoring pillar. Understanding how folks are using the coast and ocean is, I hope we all agree, really invaluable information. While we're out there, we are inadvertently doing outreach, because if you're walking down a beach carrying a clipboard, oftentimes people are flagging you down, wondering what you're doing, and you're able to do some outreach on the fly. We're providing education then also for the folks that are volunteering for this program. And ultimately, this data that we're collecting is going on to our coastal managers, including CDFW, to help with the enforcement and the compliance within these marine protected areas. And all that information then helps drive policy. So truly, MPA Watch is helping in all of those areas. And this is how MPA Watch works. It is a community science program that is statewide, and we are collecting human use data. So what that means, we walk up and down our coasts, and we are seeing how folks are using these spaces in consumptive and non-consumptive ways. So are they sunbathing? Are they fishing? Are they surfing? We are trying to capture a snapshot in time of what's happening on the beach in that moment. And then we're able to look at that moment and put it together with all the moments throughout the year. And we're able to get a much broader picture of what's happening in that particular coastline. And we're able to do that up and down the coast. And I'll show you a map of that in just a minute. But community science, if you're not already aware, it's a really powerful way to activate people in your community. You don't have to be a scientist to do community science. We provide education on marine protected areas right at the beginning of their interest in volunteering. And the amazing thing about community science is that not only do you not have to be a scientist, but you are contributing to this massive scientific project. And, the team that I work on, we are 11 strong in the United States. And that means, we have a huge coastline in California. We are not able to monitor all 124 MPAs, but with the power of our volunteers through community science, we're able to extend our reach and our understanding of our coastal usage. So the reason why this monitoring is really valuable is because we're ultimately trying to see if we are achieving the goals of the MLPA, the Marine Life Protection Act, and what type of adaptive management might be required in order to make these marine protected areas, to allow them to function at their best. And it also, at the end of the day, allows us to improve our understanding of these spaces, not just how humans are using them, but how these MPAs are, from a biological level, how they're doing as well. So this is just a quick kind of summary on one slide of how MPA Watch works. So WILDCOAST, the group I'm with, is down here. Old logo, don't tell my boss. These are the statewide partners of MPA Watch. So we do not do this in isolation or alone. We do this with 13 other partners that help us cover the entire state. So although WILDCOAST represents the San Diego group of volunteers, and I oversee kind of the statewide coordination of MPA Watch, We have partners in LA, like Heal the Bay and LA Waterkeeper. We have, I know California State Parks is on the call. They are representing really the whole state. Anywhere there's a state park, you know, they're doing these surveys. So they are a powerhouse in MPA Watch. So you get the point. If you're chiming in from San Francisco, we have MPA Watch programs up there that are managed by perhaps the Cal Academy of Sciences or Greater Fairlawns. But we have partners that are making this happen, and these partners are responsible for recruiting and training and managing their volunteers. And then they produce biannual reports that then come to me, and I do some quality control on them and kind of package them nicely and then share them with our coastal managers at places like CDFW. So really the program began in 2008 in the Monterey Bay region, but truly it became this beautiful network, and it became standardized in 2012. So they brought on a scientific advisory group that allowed us to standardize our protocol for how we collect the data so we can fairly compare the sites statewide. Right now we have 13 partners. There have been some other partners in the past, and some folks kind of come and go, but right now we're 13 strong. We are able to currently do transects or do surveys within 75 of the 124 MPAs within California, and also 84 non-MPA sites. So those are our control sites. You don't just want to look at your MPAs, you also want to see how the area is being utilized kind of outside of those boundaries as well. Just today, we hit over 40,421 surveys. I was just on our website, so I saw that number change while I was on there. So surveys are being conducted and input right now. And we are just over 2,000 volunteers statewide, so, and growing. Maybe after today, some of you will be interested too, and I'll tell you how you can get involved. So this is the summary. We are statewide. We have a lot of amazing partners that are doing this work in their regions and providing the training for their volunteers. And we work together to provide these reports onto the folks responsible for managing and enforcing the MPAs statewide. Depending on where you are, you may have one of two types, or maybe both types of MPA Watch surveys being conducted. So in 3 counties, we're doing boat-based surveys. That's San Diego, Santa Barbara, and LA counties. We are doing these boat-based surveys where we're going out usually about once a week, and we are doing surveys on the water of how folks are using the ocean along our coastline. So in this case, this is our San Diego-based Captain Joe Cooper and one of our volunteers using a scope to potentially look at some illegal fishing. We see a lot of that down here in Southern California. So we're doing a lot of observation for poaching behaviors down here. And all of our partners do our land-based surveys. So this is really where the bulk of our data is coming from. Some of our partners are even integrating MPA Watch into their existing education programs. So even young people are getting involved in these programs, like these Girl Scouts. So the process is that you have a volunteer that's interested. They reach out to their local manager, wherever they are in the state, and they take part in some sort of classroom training where they learn about MPAs and program. Then they get an in-field training where they walk a transect with the local trainer, and they work off of the data sheet and they figure out how to collect the information. That information is then input into a database on the MPA Watch website. And then there's some quality control measures that go into play, and then those reports are generated, and then we share those reports broadly. This is what the data sheet looks like, collecting all kinds of onshore and offshore activities and some consumptive, some non-consumptive behaviors. And then this is what the MPA Watch is, just a screenshot of what the MPA Watch website looks like. And they each volunteer gets their, in some cases, the volunteer gets their own login and they input their own data. Oh, look at, even as I was talking, this number, oh no, that's from the other day. I was like, look at it changed. It went down actually. Don't look at that, disregard that. So they're able to input their own data, and that then goes into a large database so I can see what's happening statewide in our MPAs and in our control sites. So these are just some quick ideas of what a consumptive versus a non-consumptive behavior might look like. Consumptive meaning an extraction of some sort of resource, whether that's fish or shells or invertebrates from the rocky intertidal or the tide pools. So more pictures here, non-consumptive onshore activities. This includes, if you're doing an MPA Watch survey, you might see lifeguards going up and down the beach patrolling. So we're counting even things like vehicles being on the beaches. We are looking at onshore consumptive practices. So some of our sites allow for fishing, some of them do not. We're not there to make a judgment or to intervene with anyone that is partaking in these activities. We're truly just making a note that the activity is occurring, and then we're moving along. Offshore activities, passive ones. So these are your, scuba diving, paddleboarding, etc. There's lots of boating options from kayaking and whale watching. And then you've also got your consumptive activities like fishing. So if a volunteer is feeling empowered enough to do so, there is a way to report a violation. So if you're doing a survey in a state marine reserve, for instance, and you see someone fishing and you know for sure that they're not allowed to fish, which you're not allowed to do in state marine reserves, you can call it into CalTIP and you can provide that information, and you might get someone like a local warden or ranger to come out and intervene. And so that means you're not having to intervene or to take on that enforcement role, because you're likely not qualified to do so if you're not a warden or a ranger. So CalTIP is a great way to communicate what you're seeing, including violations. So we could potentially get some help out there to curb that behavior. I know I'm at the end here, so I'm going to wrap it up. These are an example of some of the reports that are generated. Like I said, we do biannual reports for MPA Watch. These are all found on our website, mpawatch.org. We do January through June. So those reports are submitted. We check them all to make sure the formatting and the numbers are all good. And then we upload them in July to our website. And then we do a January through December, and those are loaded in January. Excuse me. Two really important documents that have come out of MPA Watch recently. We worked with the Center for Community and Citizen Science out of the UC Davis Data Lab. And they were essentially looking at all of our data from 2012 to 2020. And essentially they were able to prove that MPA Watch data is very robust and statistically accurate and very, very beneficial. And this is important because this can also be given to CDFW to say, this work is legitimate and very valuable. And speaking of CDFW, if you know anything about MPAs, you know that we just rounded out 10 years with our MPAs, which means that all of our MPAs underwent the decadal management review, and that included MPA Watch. We provided a multi-page document which summarized the history and the value of MPA Watch and how folks are using the coast and ocean. And we work with CDFW regularly to fine-tune our reports so that we're giving them the most valuable information that they could benefit from. And yeah, that was a fast and furious explanation. Community science program that is collecting data statewide on human use. And although we are not necessarily working directly with wildlife disturbances, we are observing it constantly, and that goes into our data form, and then that goes into our database, and violations are flagged and then communicated with CDFW, which then helps tell them where they should be doing more patrols, where they should be spending some of their staff time. And we were one of the first groups to chime in early 2020, early COVID days, to say that tide pools were definitely being overrun with visitors, and that there was lots of poaching happening. So again, wildlife disturbance, not like top of the list for MPA Watch, but certainly a wonderful kind of byproduct of the program as a whole. I'm going to stop talking now. Questions if you have them. Otherwise, my contact information is on the screen.